Hate crimes in North America. A hate crime is an attack of violence against property, an individual, or a group motivated by prejudice against race, religion, sexual orientation, or gender. Who experiences hate crimes? People of visible minority based on race or religion are most likely to experience hate crimes. Also, people of different sexual orientation. Women are also at a higher risk than men for hate crimes. Disabled people are also targeted for hate crimes. To be more precise, in 2020, the United States FBI Department released hate crime statistics. It was reported that 61.8% of hate crimes were racially motivated, 20% motivated by homophobia, 13.3% motivated by religion, 2.7% were motivated by gender identity, 1.4% against people with disabilities, and 0.7% motivated by gender. My thesis. Hate crimes cause major violence and animosity between distinct groups, and justice is not always served to the victim. The intent of this paper is to investigate the violence and likeliness of hate crimes in North America against people of color, people of different religions, homosexual people, and what is being done to oppose this biased violence. Canadian and American hate crime facts were used in the paper. Canadian or American data was used depending on which country had a bigger issue and more information about that specific hate crime. This paper includes the comparison and contrast between the US and Canada's politics and efforts towards the protection against these hate crimes. Black people are most likely to be the victims of hate crimes in a lot of countries, especially in America. In 2019, American studies concluded that 48% of hate crime victims were Black residents, and numbers are rising every year in America. Stereotypes about Black people, rooted from the history of slavery in America, follow Black residents around today and puts their safety in question when it comes to hate crimes, as they are the most targeted group. In the famous hate crimes against African Americans George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, it was proven that the justice system puts forth little to no effort towards the protection of Black people. Those three were public figures for the Black Lives Matter movement. The Black Lives Matter movement protests for racial equality of the justice system and to end the overall racism towards Black people. Black Lives Matter movement has had many accomplishments. The LAPD and NYPD redirected police funding to invest in the community. All 4 of the officers involved in George Floyd's murder were arrested and charged after a lot of protesting. Minneapolis banned the use of chokeholds while arresting, and many Confederate statues have been taken down across America. Hate crimes against the Asian community have increased enormously since the beginning of COVID-19. Since COVID-19 roots from Wuhan, China, and Donald Trump made sure to make that very clear to everyone that listens to him by calling it the Chinese virus, he caused a lot of animosity towards Asian Americans. The 2020 hate crime FBI data also shows that hate crimes against Asians have increased by 73% since the beginning of the pandemic. Even though the virus rooted in China, anyone who appears to be Asian has an increased risk for hate crimes since the pandemic started. BBC News reported many different articles. An elderly Thai immigrant dies after being shoved to the ground. A Filipino American is slashed in the face with a box cutter. A Chinese woman is slapped and then set on fire. 8 people are killed in a shooting rampage across 3 Asian spas in one night. Donald Trump is partially responsible for these violent aggressors when he riled up everyone who listens to him by calling it the Chinese virus and putting the blame on the Asian community. On the other hand, current President Joe Biden signed a law that addresses the concerning increase in anti-Asian hate crimes. The legislation plans to create a new position within the Justice Department to investigate all COVID-19 related hate crimes. AAPI, Asian American and Pacific Islander, is an organization formed to protect anti-Asian racism and to demand the government crisis intervention in their protection. Hate crimes against Hispanic people in America is very common, especially because of Donald Trump's presidency. Donald Trump fueled Americans with anger about illegal Hispanic immigrants, saying that they're stealing their jobs, stealing money, and that he would build a wall to divide them. During his presidency, he caused a major spike in anti-Hispanic hate crimes. The 2018 FBI data revealed the number of victims from anti-Latino hate crimes has rose by over 21% in the last year. Hispanic people became a huge target for hate crimes, like the mass hate crime that happened in El Paso, Texas, where a man entered Walmart with the intention of killing as many Mexicans as possible. He killed 23 people and injured 26, making it one of the biggest anti-Hispanic hate crimes in history. There has been activism and protests to spread awareness about anti-Hispanic hate crimes and the discrimination they face. Israel Concha is the president of a nonprofit organization that helps deported Mexicans return to America, and the program is called New Comienzos. They've helped over 5,000 deportees return to America, find legal work, learn English, obtain psychological help, and, most importantly, reunite with their families. Anti-Indigenous hate crimes are very common in Canada due to the dark history of residential schools. Residential schools are put in place by Christian churches to assimilate Indigenous children into a Canadian society. The trauma the children in residential schools suffered followed within the community. Many Canadians resent the fact that Indigenous people receive compensation for what they had to go through before. Therefore, when Indigenous activism began, there was a 17% increase in anti-Indigenous hate crimes. Stereotypes about Indigenous people include Indigenous people being alcoholics, drug addicts, lazy, and savages. It was even concluded that Indigenous women are 12 times more likely to go missing than any other demographic of women in Canada. Canada is finally starting to recognize the dark history and what Indigenous people still have to suffer to this day, especially in terms of hate crimes. Starting in 2021, on September 30th, was the first National Truth and Reconciliation Day. It is considered a holiday in some provinces and territories, but in others it will be an educational day. Truth and Reconciliation Day and wearing orange shirts, protests, trending hashtags, education in schools, awareness on the radio and television all contribute to the prevention of anti-Indigenous hate crimes. Religiously motivated hate crimes are also very common in America, Islamophobia being the second most common. There was a significant increase in anti-Muslim hate crimes after the 9/11 terrorist attack. The rates increased by 1,617%. The president at the time, George W. Bush, said, "The face of terror is not the true faith of Islam. That's not what Islam is all about. Islam is peace. These terrorists don't represent peace. They represent evil and war." After a terrorist attack, hate crimes against Muslims have a tendency to increase. After the bombing in London in 2005, anti-Muslim hate crimes increased by 281%. Hijabi women are at a high risk because the hijab represents Islam and is very visible to other people. The OSCE is a Muslim protection organization running in many different parts of the world. They supply education and promote respect for Islam and all people in schools. They send their trained educators to also teach gender equality, human rights, fundamental freedom, and many other important factors concerning Islam. Sikhism is a religion practiced by many Indians, and to outsiders it is commonly mistaken for Islam. People's ignorance caused them to get confused between a hijabi woman and a turban-wearing Sikh man, even though they are two completely different and separate religions. Since Sikh people are commonly mistaken for Muslims, their risk for hate crimes after 9/11 increased significantly. Sikhs of all ages have been victims of hate crimes. It starts with school bullying, like Jasikrat Singh, who was the victim of his classmates setting his turban on fire. Also, the NYPD is still refusing to hire turban-wearing Sikhs and profiling 100% of the Sikhs going through TSA. It was reported that 69% of turban-wearing Sikh children in San Francisco have reported being bullied physically, emotionally, or mentally due to their turbans. Organizations like Sikh Coalition and SALDEF, Sikh American Legal Defense and Education Fund, are put in place to protect Sikhs against these hate crimes. The Sikh Coalition was even founded in response to the rapid increase in Sikh-targeted hate crimes. These organizations have organized rallies and protests to raise awareness about Sikh-targeted hate crimes and to demand better protection laws in the workplace, schools, and on the streets. The SALDEF focuses on the education of Sikhs, the sufferance towards the allies, and the legal defense for Sikh victims of hate crimes. Judaism is the most targeted religion for hate crimes in all of America. Hitler's Holocaust ended 77 years ago, but the sufferance of Jewish people has not. They still face discrimination and division in today's society. The United States reported that in 2020, Jewish people were the biggest target of anti-religion hate crimes at 683 crimes. The second most targeted religion had 537 less crimes reported. Therefore, the gap between Jewish hatred and the hatred for any other religion is enormous. Due to Israel's takeover of Palestine, Jewish people face many hate crimes. There is animosity between Jewish Israeli people and Palestinian people and most of the Arab community and their allies. The American Jewish Committee is an organization put in place against anti-Semitism. The CEO, David Harris, said, "The fact that American Jews, who make up no more than 2% of the U.S. population, are the targets of nearly 60% of religious bias crimes should set off alarm bells." The American Jewish Committee has had events to spread awareness about the issues within the community and to collect donations. A lot of those donations are being shared with the people of Israel. As the situation between Israel and Palestine remains to be a very controversial topic, the American Jewish Committee can only oppose hate crimes towards Jewish people to a certain extent, but Jewish people will continue to be a target for religiously motivated hate crimes due to Israel's takeover of Palestine. As the LGBTQ plus is a fairly new community in today's society, the LGBTQ plus members continue to be a huge target for hate crimes. Older generations and strict religious people are against homosexuality. The FBI reported that in the U.S., 1 in 5 hate crimes are motivated by anti-LGBTQ+, and 60% of those targets are gay men. The National Library of Medicine conducted a survey that revealed that 92% of the surveyed gay men and surveyed lesbian women have experienced verbal abuse or threats, and 24% of them have been physically assaulted. Gay men are more commonly targeted for hate crimes compared to lesbian women. The FBI concluded that in 2018, there were over 700 reported anti-gay hate crimes towards a man. That same year, there was roughly 150 hate crimes targeting lesbian women. June is considered Pride Month, where the members of the LGBTQ+ community get to celebrate who they truly are. Awareness is spread during Pride Month. Also, viral hashtags and internet support also spreads awareness. On December 12, 2021, Canada officially banned all conversion therapies. In the U.S., only 20 states and 70 municipalities have banned conversion therapy, which is a huge factor why anti-LGBTQ+ hate crimes are more common in the U.S. than in Canada. Another contrast between Canada and America is that gay marriage has been legalized in Canada since 2005, and in 2015, 10 years later, the U.S. finally made it legal in all states of America for gay men and women to marry each other. As transgender people are coming out, the hate crimes towards transgender people continue to increase. In 2020, the U.S. FBI reported that anti-gay hate crimes fell slightly, but anti-trans hate crimes rose by 20%. The National Center for Trans Equality surveyed almost 28,000 trans adults. Nearly half of the surveyed reported being verbally harassed for being trans, and 1 in 10 of the surveyed reported being physically assaulted. The numbers of anti-trans hate crimes are predicted to be higher than the data shows, after 57% of surveyed trans people said they wouldn't ask the police for help regarding trans bias harassment. Trans people have revealed that police officers aren't reliable for help regarding anti-trans hate crimes. Police officers have mistreated them, especially regarding trans people of color. Again, there is a huge contrast between how Canada and America deal with the rising numbers of anti-LGBTQ trans people hate crime rates. Former U.S. President Donald Trump tried to erase the trans rights of a sex category. That would mean that every trans person would have to identify with the gender that they were born with. It is dangerous for a trans person to not have their gender on their identity card to match how they look on the outside. It would especially be difficult when dealing with law enforcement if they think you have a fake ID. Meanwhile, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh attended Pride festivals to show their unity with trans and LGBTQ members in Canada. Trudeau gave out scholarships to also further the research towards protection of trans people. Current President Joe Biden is trying to pick up the pieces of what Donald Trump destroyed. He is currently putting in many efforts to support the trans community by recognizing trans veterans, recognize how brave trans people are, and to prove his alliance with their community. Trans influencers like Jazzy Jennings, who has the TV show I Am Jazzy on TLC, Beyonce Mitchell, who is famous on TikTok, and Caitlyn Jenner, famously known for being married to Kris Jenner and regarding the Kardashian family, are all public figures within the trans community. It can surely be concluded that many minorities don't feel safe as race, religion, or sexuality biased hate crimes are still common in North America. Canada has made significant progress in comparison to the United States regarding increasing hate crime rates. This shows the contrast between the leadership in both countries. Donald Trump has caused a divided nation, while Trudeau tries to have a united yet diverse nation. Laws put in place against hate crimes have proven to be ineffective, and that's because the justice system is unfair. Black people, Asian people, Hispanic people, and Indigenous people represent 61.8% of racially motivated hate crimes. Muslim people, Sikh people, and Jewish people represent most of the 13.3% of religiously biased hate crimes. Gay men, lesbian women, and trans people only represent a part of the 20% of hate crimes motivated by homophobia. Minorities are still at an extremely elevated risk for violence and have to live their lives in fear. Despite protests, activism, and organization, the fact remains that almost 70% of all hate crimes are inflicted on a person. Personally, as a white, Catholic, and straight woman, I get to feel safe in my everyday life, knowing nobody wants to hurt me due to my race, religion, or sexual orientation. The proof of such racism in America and Canada raises my concerns for my friends of color. I couldn't imagine being targeted for who I am, and I'm fortunate to be a minimal risk for targeted hate crimes. I think it's important that people like me, straight, white, and not as targeted in terms of religion, unite together with the people who are at an elevated risk. Unity creates power, and as I may not personally feel the pain, I stand with the people that do. The North American governments, especially the American government, has a lot to work to do and they need to do better, especially in terms of fairness in the legal system, so justice can be served to all victims, making them feel safer where they live. We need to eliminate political public figures with biased opinions like Donald Trump. Harsher consequences need to be put towards aggressors because safety of all minorities should be a main priority in North America.